There is a mountain in North Carolina that glows at night. Not from city lights, not from fires, not from anything that scientists, after 100 years of trying, have been able to fully explain. It has been glowing since before the United States existed, since before European settlers arrived. The Cherokee people watched these lights for centuries and built their legends around them. Spanish conquistadors recorded them in 1771. Civil War soldiers on both sides reported them from their camps. And tonight, if you drive out to Wiseman's View Overlook in Burke County, North Carolina, and you wait long enough in the dark, you will see them. Orbs of light. Red, white, blue, orange, rising from the ridge of Brown Mountain, hovering, then vanishing. Sometimes one at a time, sometimes in clusters, sometimes close enough that people have run toward them, only to watch them disappear before they could get near. 800 years of witnesses, and not a single explanation that holds up completely. This is the story of the Brown Mountain Lights, and it is stranger than anything Hollywood has ever invented. The Blue Ridge Mountains of western North Carolina are not the dramatic, jagged peaks of the Rockies. They are old, profoundly old, among the oldest mountain ranges on Earth, worn smooth by hundreds of millions of years of erosion into long forested ridges that roll southward like the swells of a dark green ocean. Brown Mountain sits in Burke County, rising to about 2,600 feet, modest by Appalachian standards. It is not a famous mountain. It is not on the cover of travel magazines. It does not attract climbers or skiers. What it attracts, what it has attracted for centuries, are people who come specifically to stand in the dark and look at the ridge and wait for the lights. The surrounding landscape is the Pisgah National Forest, 1.5 million acres of temperate rainforest, ancient hardwoods, rushing mountain streams, and the particular Appalachian silence that settles in after sundown, like something with weight. There are logging roads and hiking trails and old homesteads going back to the colonial era. There are communities that have lived in these hollows and ridges for 8 or 9 generations, families whose great-great-great-grandparents watched these same lights from these same hills and passed the story down through every generation in between. The towns nearby, Morganton, Lenoir, Linville, are ordinary American small towns, diners and hardware stores and high school football and Sunday church. But ask anyone who grew up here about Brown Mountain, and something shifts in the way they talk. They get quieter, more careful. They are not sure what they believe exactly, but they have seen things, or their parents have, or their grandparents swore by it until the day they died. The Brown Mountain Lights are not folklore in the sense of a story people tell. They are folklore in the older sense, something experienced, collectively, across generations, for which no single explanation has ever stuck. That is what makes them different from almost everything else in American history, because one of the things that separates the Brown Mountain Lights from most paranormal legends is the sheer credibility and diversity of the people who have reported them. The Cherokee. The earliest recorded accounts of lights on Brown Mountain come from the Cherokee people who lived throughout the southern Appalachians for thousands of years before European contact. Their oral tradition includes specific accounts of lights on the mountain, the most famous being a legend about a great battle fought on or near Brown Mountain between Cherokee and Catawba warriors. In this tradition, the lights are the spirits of Cherokee women who still search the mountain for their fallen husbands and sons. This account predates European arrival by centuries. The Cherokee were not telling this story because they had heard it from settlers. The settlers arrived to find the story already ancient. German engineer Gerard Will de Brom, 1771. This is the earliest European written record of the Brown Mountain Lights. De Brom was surveying the North Carolina backcountry for the British Crown when he recorded lights emanating from Brown Mountain, which he explained, with the scientific confidence of his era, as nitrous vapors rising from the mountain and igniting. He was probably wrong about the explanation. He was certainly right about the lights. Civil War soldiers, 1860s. Multiple accounts from soldiers on both sides of the Civil War, encamped in the Burke County area during various periods of the conflict, include mentions of strange lights visible on Brown Mountain at night. Men who had no knowledge of the local legend, who were just soldiers trying to sleep in the Carolina mountains, reported seeing lights and wondering what they were. The Morganton Herald, 1913. The first major newspaper coverage of the Brown Mountain Lights appeared in the Morganton Herald in September 1913, after a group of hunters reported extensive sightings during an expedition in the area. This article spread nationally, picked up by wire services, and introduced millions of Americans to a phenomenon that Burke County locals had taken for granted for generations. It also triggered the first serious scientific investigation. Modern witnesses, thousands of them. Today, the Brown Mountain Lights have been witnessed by scientists, geologists, atmospheric physicists, amateur investigators, tourists, photographers, and perfectly ordinary North Carolinians who drove out to the overlook on a Friday night with no particular agenda and saw something they could not explain. The witnesses continue. They are not stopping. There has not been a year in recorded history during which the lights have simply not appeared. The Brown Mountain Lights are rare among American mysteries in that they have been the subject of not one, but two formal government investigations conducted by the United States Geological Survey, the official federal scientific body responsible for studying the nation's geography and geology. The first investigation was conducted in 1913, triggered by the national newspaper coverage. USGS geologist Joseph Holmes traveled to Burke County and spent time studying the phenomenon. His conclusion: the lights were reflections of locomotive headlights from nearby railroad lines, refracted and amplified by atmospheric conditions in the mountain valleys. It was a tidy, scientific, satisfying explanation. Then the Great Flood of 1916 hit western North Carolina. The flood washed out every railroad track in the region. It knocked out every electrical power line. For weeks, the entire infrastructure of artificial light in Burke County was gone. The Brown Mountain Lights kept appearing. Same lights, same ridge, same hovering, glowing, unexplained orbs, rising from Brown Mountain and disappearing into the mountain dark. With no trains, no power lines, no locomotives. The USGS came back. A second investigation was conducted in 1922 by geologist George Rogers Mansfield, who spent considerably more time in the field and compiled a much more extensive report. Mansfield's conclusion was more nuanced than Holmes's. He acknowledged that some of the lights, perhaps 44%, could be explained as reflections of automobile headlights and locomotive lights. Some could be explained as brush fires or campfires. Some might be ball lightning or other rare atmospheric phenomena. But Mansfield was honest in his report. He could not explain all of them. A significant portion of the lights he documented, under conditions that ruled out the obvious explanations, remained genuinely unexplained. The USGS report, an official federal document, used the word unexplained. In the century since the Mansfield report, the Brown Mountain Lights have attracted a full spectrum of explanatory theories, from the rigidly scientific to the genuinely extraordinary. Here is where each one stands. Reflected light, trains, cars, towns. The original USGS explanation. As we established, it fails completely under the conditions of the 1916 flood, and has never adequately explained sightings in the pre-industrial era, when there were no trains or automobiles to reflect. Ball lightning. Ball lightning is a real, documented atmospheric phenomenon. Spheres of electrical plasma that can persist for several seconds to several minutes, moving in ways that seem to defy ordinary atmospheric physics. It is extremely rare. It has been observed, photographed, and partially studied. Some researchers believe it could account for some Brown Mountain sightings. The problem? Ball lightning doesn't appear reliably enough, consistently enough, in the same geographic location, over 800 years, to account for the Brown Mountain pattern. Ball lightning is random, the Brown Mountain Lights are not. Bioluminescence. Some researchers have proposed that the lights might be produced by bioluminescent organisms. Specifically, certain species of fungus, bacteria, or insects that produce cold light through chemical reactions. Foxfire fungus, which genuinely glows a faint green in decaying wood, is native to Appalachian forests. Fireflies produce visible light. But foxfire is dim, close to the ground, and green. The Brown Mountain Lights are bright enough to be seen from miles away, rise off the ridgeline, and come in multiple colors, including red and orange. Bioluminescence, while real, cannot account for what's described. Piezoelectric effect, the tectonic explanation. This is the most scientifically interesting modern theory. The Appalachian Mountains sit on ancient, highly stressed geological faults. When tectonic plates shift and grind, certain types of rock, particularly quartz-bearing rock, which is common throughout the Blue Ridge Range, can produce electrical charges through a process called the piezoelectric effect. These charges, under the right conditions, can ionize the air above the rock and create visible plasma. Essentially, natural light produced by the Earth itself. This theory has genuine scientific backing. Researchers have documented earthquake lights, similar phenomena associated with seismic activity, in other parts of the world. The Appalachian Fault System is not inactive. There is real geological stress in these mountains. And crucially, this explanation would account for the lights in the pre-industrial era, during the 1916 flood, under conditions that rule out all human-made light sources. The geology doesn't care whether the trains are running. Spiritual and paranormal explanations. The Cherokee tradition, the spirits of women searching for their dead. Various modern paranormal researchers who propose that Brown Mountain is a window area, a location where interdimensional or paranormal activity is concentrated. UFO researchers who have documented the lights as consistent with reported UAP, unidentified aerial phenomena, behavior. These explanations are impossible to test scientifically. They are also, to the people who hold them, no less credible than the scientific theories. Because the scientific theories haven't closed the case either. The honest answer: no single theory explains all of the Brown Mountain Lights. The scientific consensus, such as it is, points toward a combination of causes. Some reflected light, some atmospheric plasma, possibly some piezoelectric earth lights, with the acknowledgement that the combination doesn't fully account for everything in the historical record. The Brown Mountain Lights remain, officially and genuinely, unexplained. Here is what makes the Brown Mountain Lights different from most American mysteries. You can go see them. Not metaphorically, not in a museum display or a documentary recreation. You can drive to Burke County, North Carolina, park your car at the Wiseman's View Overlook on Kistler Memorial Highway, or at the Brown Mountain Overlook on NC Highway 181. Wait until full dark and watch. People do this every weekend, every week of the year. Local residents, who've been doing it since childhood, bring their kids and eventually their grandkids. Tourists drive from Charlotte and Raleigh and Atlanta specifically for this. Paranormal investigators set up cameras. Astronomers bring telescopes. Geologists bring instruments. And frequently, not always, but frequently enough to sustain 800 years of tradition, the lights appear. They have been photographed. The photographs exist and are publicly available. They have been recorded on video. The videos exist and are publicly available. They have been observed under controlled conditions designed to eliminate obvious explanations. They continue to appear. The most recent serious scientific study of the Brown Mountain Lights was conducted by researchers from Appalachian State University, who set up monitoring equipment and documented multiple appearances over an extended period. Their findings, published in academic literature, confirmed that the lights are real, observable, physical phenomena, and confirmed that the full explanation for their origin remains incomplete. Real, observable, unexplained. In a country where we have mapped every square foot of terrain from satellite, where we can track the migration of individual birds with microchip technology, where we have sent probes to the edge of the solar system, a mountain in North Carolina still glows with light that we cannot fully account for. There is something deeply, specifically American, about the Brown Mountain Lights. Not because mystery is uniquely American, every culture has its inexplicable places, its lights in the dark, its something out there. But the Brown Mountain Lights exist in a country that has built its identity on the proposition that everything can be explained, measured, solved, and conquered. A country of engineers and scientists and pragmatists. A country that put men on the moon and mapped the human genome and decoded the fundamental forces of nature. And this mountain in North Carolina keeps glowing. Not dramatically, not in a way that makes the nightly news or breaks through the noise of the modern world. Just quietly, persistently, in the dark above the tree line, the way it has been glowing since Cherokee warriors gathered on its slopes, and long before anyone alive today drew their first breath. The Brown Mountain Lights don't ask for your belief. They don't need it. They have been appearing without anyone's permission or understanding for 8 centuries, and they will continue appearing long after every person alive today is gone. What they offer, if you're willing to receive it, is something rarer than explanation. They offer genuine mystery, the real thing. Not a puzzle waiting to be solved, not a cold case with a perpetrator, not a cipher with a hidden message. A genuine, physical, observable, irreducible mystery, the kind that makes you feel, standing in the dark at a mountain overlook in North Carolina, that the world is bigger and stranger and more alive than any system of explanation has yet fully captured. The Cherokee knew that. They built a story around it that honored the lights without trying to own them. Maybe that is the wisest thing anyone has done with the Brown Mountain Lights in 800 years. Not everything that glows in the dark needs to be explained. Some things are allowed to simply be. Go see them for yourself. There is something deeply, specifically American, about the Brown Mountain Lights. Not because mystery is uniquely American, every culture has its inexplicable places, its lights in the dark, its something out there. But the Brown Mountain Lights exist in a country that has built its identity on the proposition that everything can be explained, measured, solved, and conquered. A country of engineers and scientists and pragmatists. A country that put men on the moon and mapped the human genome and decoded the fundamental forces of nature. And this mountain in North Carolina keeps glowing. Not dramatically, not in a way that makes the nightly news or breaks through the noise of the modern world. Just quietly, persistently, in the dark above the tree line, the way it has been glowing since Cherokee warriors gathered on its slopes, and long before anyone alive today drew their first breath. The Brown Mountain Lights don't ask for your belief. They don't need it. They have been appearing without anyone's permission or understanding for 8 centuries, and they will continue appearing long after every person alive today is gone. What they offer, if you're willing to receive it, is something rarer than explanation. They offer genuine mystery, the real thing. Not a puzzle waiting to be solved, not a cold case with a perpetrator, not a cipher with a hidden message. A genuine, physical, observable, irreducible mystery, the kind that makes you feel, standing in the dark at a mountain overlook in North Carolina, that the world is bigger and stranger and more alive than any system of explanation has yet fully captured. The Cherokee knew that. They built a story around it that honored the lights without trying to own them. Maybe that is the wisest thing anyone has done with the Brown Mountain Lights in 800 years. Not everything that glows in the dark needs to be explained. Some things are allowed to simply be. Go see them for yourself.